When I first drove the Peugeot 3008 on its launch earlier this year in Italy, I said on camera that we could be dealing with a new class leader. I know, and it's been about a decade since we said that about Peugeot, but they seem to have got their mojo back. Today is the day we find out. We're back here in the UK. There's actually only 9 Peugeot 3008s in the UK currently, hence why I'm on a left-hand drive foreign plated car. But this privilege to drive it in the UK enables us a very early opportunity to judge just how good this car could be for our way of life, with potholes and stop-start traffic and long hauls on the motorway. Kicking off with the visuals, I think you have to agree that the Peugeot 3008 is one of the best looking SUVs in its class. I mean, not just good for Peugeot, not just good for a French SUV, I mean it has real panache, doesn't it? It's got this beautiful design language from nose to tail, really premium, expensive. It oozes this quality and French swagger with the intricate details on the LED lighting, the red slashes that make up the rear light clusters, the diamond black roof with this contrasting white looks amazing. I really like it. This car in GT line specification, we get some snazzy alloy wheels and it just looks the part, doesn't it? An awful lot of having a premium SUV is image, and I think the 3008 certainly ticks that box. The interior is another huge headline in this car, as I'm now sat in Peugeot's i-cockpit, and it's a new ethos, a new way of Peugeot thinking how a cockpit works. It's quite driver-centric. The angled screens are all pointing towards me, but I feel like I sit low. This big dividing console here splits me from the passenger, and you feel you sit within it. You're sort of more cocooned around, and you're certainly cocooned in technology in this case. Up front is a 12.3-inch display, which, much like Audi's system that sort of coats the screen in whatever computation of dials you want, that's what this Peugeot does with really beautiful animations. You can tailor it exactly to what you want, and that's quite an impressive thing to find on what is a more mainstream car, and that actually comes as standard with every Peugeot 3008, unlike some of its more premium rivals where it's a cost option. Talking of screens, we've got this new touchscreen infotainment display here. It runs new software in comparison to its predecessor, and it's also a new form of touchscreen. It's much more responsive, it's much more ergonomic, and yeah, it's a big step up from what we have previously. And again, that comes as standard with every 3008 in the UK. As I mentioned, this car's a GT line model, which means we get these slightly sportier quilted leather seats. These ones are heated and massaging, and it just creates this quite cosseting environment. It feels a bit posh, a bit premium in here, but it's also comfortable, and at the end of the day, we spend so much time on the inside of our cars. Comfort is a really important thing. And something else that adds to the sophistication, I suppose, of the cabin is the really sculpted surfaces with different textures on them, the neat stitching, the aluminium. It's a real visual pleasure to look upon, as opposed to, you know, a lot of the grey, bland, flat surfaces you tend to see for dashboards. I love how it cascades into these shortcut piano keys, which work really well, by the way. You know, a lot of touchscreens now, you end up fumbling whilst you're driving, trying to find something. You can memorize where these buttons are, they're tactile, you can feel them, and they shortcut into things like air conditioning, music, navigation and the like, and they're really handy. Makes driving and operating the infotainment system much easier. Rear occupants on this specific car get plenty of natural light let in through that glass panoramic roof above them, and also get good levels of head and legroom for the outermost passengers. Whilst I will say there is a flat floor for the middle passenger to enjoy, there is a protruding air conditioning unit that sort of pokes out, and it sort of cuts down on legroom a bit. I think that element is a bit too much style over sustenance, a bit of a shame, but generally speaking there's plenty of space back there. Heading even further back, you'll find a really usable 591 litre boot with a nice big opening, meaning that bulky objects should fit in there no problem whatsoever. Rear visibility could be better. So here in the UK, the biggest seller is going to be the 1.6 litre 120 horsepower engine that we've got under the bonnet of this car. This one is mated to a really good 6-speed automatic transmission. It's quite smooth. You can hardly notice the changes, and it's pretty responsive on the paddles up here too. Now the engine does emit that traditional diesel grumble whenever it's under load, but very quickly it sort of fades into the background. It's not too noisy once you're underway, and generally speaking the noise from tyre roar and wind noise is so well suppressed you could have a relatively quiet conversation in this car. 300 Newton meters of torque means that there's strong overtaking potential, meaning that getting past dawdlers on the motorway is not going to be a problem. Peugeot claims that this engine will return 64 mpg and emit just 108 grams per kilometre of CO2. Now, as with most Peugeots, the 3008 adopts this small squat steering wheel, although it's had its top lopped off, so you don't have that issue of not being able to see the dials and things like we've had in some of the previous cars. This one, it makes the car have this rather agile feeling. It feels like it's faster to respond, and of course that's what a little steering wheel can do. With the plentiful grip on board and relatively good resistance to body roll, the car's agility can be taken advantage of. It's actually a pretty good car to drive. Obviously it's not a Mazda MX-5, but it's certainly capable, and it's not dull either. And of course something else that aids that agility is that this car weighs 100 kilos less than its predecessor. If you push the sport button down here, you'll find that the throttle response sharpens further, and there's some real weight that's added to the steering, allowing for even more precise inputs. An important factor for us here in the UK is how it's going to deal with our rather potholed roads. And I have to say, on the whole, really well. Obviously silky smooth Italian roads when we first drove it, it's very hard to gauge something like that. But overall it's quite settled. Obviously the larger alloy wheels do reveal a bit of a thump and bump into potholes. But that is to be expected. But generally speaking, it's quite well damped, and certainly if you go for a smaller alloy wheel option, it's not going to cause you too much bother at all. It rides pretty well. It strikes this really nice balance between handling and comfort. Something else that can be optioned at a relatively low price is the grip control function we have down here. It's your typical Peugeot scroll wheel with your different modes on there, which aids in boosting the traction of this front wheel drive model. Now some people may scoff at a front wheel drive SUV and say it's not very capable, but let's not forget that it was a front wheel drive car that won the Dakar Rally, from Peugeot no less. If it sounds like I'm smitten with the new Peugeot 3008, well, it's because I am. I'm genuinely impressed. The metamorphosis from slightly quirky MPV into much more chic SUV has done this model the world of good. And on top of that, for Peugeot to come into an incredibly competitive marketplace and produce a product this good, it certainly deserves some respect. This 1.6 litre BlueHDi diesel I think is a really good fit for the UK. It's the right size engine, it's got good performance, good economy. Yeah, genuinely impressed. You can have the new Peugeot 3008 from £21,795. Order books open in December and it hits the road in January 2017. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments below. Please subscribe for all of the latest and greatest cars to hit the road. For breaking news and written reviews, visit www.insidelane.co.uk.